Hello, what's up? My name is Jessie Drew, and we are going to talk with my brother Jeffrey Watson about the Blair Witch Project from 1999. It was a year that was so fine. 1999. I was dreaming when I wrote this, so sue me if
I was just about to start, so I'm glad you did that.
I didn't know you were going to do that. If I had known you were going to do that, I'll let you do that.
We don't do that. We don't.
Okay. I'll do that. Hello, everyone. Friends, family, new friends. Welcome to Movies to Be Murdered By, the podcast hosted by two people of color. You had two people of color in one podcast talking about horror movies, people. Okay, this is a real treat. Shout out to all of the podcasts everywhere about anything led by people of color, because we are here for that. Yep. If you are not a person of color, you are welcome to the party, because we will not do to you as has been done to us. We are talking today about 1999's seminal film, The Blair Witch Project, directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez. It was written by those same two guys. It's starring Heather Donahue, Michael C. Williams, Joshua Leonard, and it was something of a phenomenon. Something like a phenomenon. I was going to go right into that. Jeffrey Watson, Esquire, the third. Tell us a little bit about what you remember, just off the cuff, off the top of your head, memories of. I mean, first of all, did you go see the Blair Witch Project in the theater?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you were like 2 years old.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Okay.
Yeah.
You were 40. You were already 40.
41,
so,
but who's counting?
Who's counting?
Yeah, I absolutely saw it in the theaters. And I'll be honest, the first time that I saw a trailer for it or I heard about it, I was like, holy crap, this is a real thing. And all the stuff that my mom said about watching all these demented movies is true. Like I'm doomed, because the stuff that I like to see, this is a real story, and I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. And I just remember thinking that this was like a true documentary, found footage. Someone, these three people were, they were trying to find out this information, and they met their demise. And I thought that for a little while. I'll be honest with you. They got me hook, line, and sinker. And, it was terrifying, honestly. What about you?
I went to go see it in the theater. I definitely remember not being sure. I had no idea whether this was for real or if this was a ruse, So I was just in there, like, super curious, kind of feeling like, oh, it's just probably fake. I know it's probably fake, but I really didn't know. I was not sure. I had talked about after rewatching the movie. I was talking about this with my husband, and we were talking about this, about the whole, like, did you know that it was real? Did you think it was fake? And he had said that he had gone with his friend, and both of them weren't sure if it was weren't sure if it was real or fake. And I said, yeah, I had opened my mouth to tell him, like, well, back then it's not like we had the internet, and but I'm like, whoa, we did have the internet. It just, they had a website. And I'm pretty sure I logged on to it to see like what's the scoop, and I still couldn't make out whether if it was real or fake. But yeah, it was I think they call it like the first movie that went viral, or something like that, even, before the technology for something to go viral was up, just because their marketing campaign was so amazing. And we were, my husband and I started talking about it today, and I said they could just make a movie just about the marketing campaign. That's all, like, you could just talk about that, because it's so fascinating. And then in looking it up, they actually did make a movie about, it's called like Into the Woods or something like that, or In the Woods. And it was about how they marketed it and got people to believe that these 3 kids were missing for real. Something like they were under contract that they couldn't like appear in other movies or TV shows for a certain amount of time after the movie, after the movie was released. And they couldn't go, they weren't able to go on any of the promo tours, which kind of sucks, because they released this at Sundance, and like you'd want to, as an actor, especially, like you'd want to be, and you're starting out, like you'd want to be at Sundance and whatever. But ultimately the plan on how they marketed this movie by making it very mysterious worked. So you were like, back when you saw it, if you can remember, like back when you saw it, were you with other people? Did you go by yourself? Were you scared? Like, was it one of the scariest movies you had seen? Had you ever seen a found footage movie before?
So I'll answer the last question first. No, I had never seen a found footage film before. I went with several friends who we all thought that, we were tough, and, it's a movie, that kind of thing. Secretly, I'm sitting there like, holy crap, I hope I don't like jump or yell or scream or anything like that while the rest of these people are here, because I didn't want to look like a punk. But I was terrified. I was legitimately terrified. And, I just remember looking at the footage, and obviously, there weren't many found footage films out there. Number one, but number two, it looked real. Like it looked like if I took my video camera out into the woods, which was another reason I was freaked out, because I lived in an area where there were a ton of wooded areas. So so it's like, okay, you got that element. Then I, being the person that I am, have, wandered off into the woods a few times and have felt that, paranoia of, oh crap, am I lost? Do I know how to get back? Now, luckily, the wooded areas weren't as, deep as, what they were going through, but still wooded areas. And I'm just thinking like, oh my God, this branch that I saw, this twig that I saw, is that what about that? What about this sound? So it created all of these questions for me that honestly, like, I had never thought of until I watched this movie. And I just remember being extremely terrified. And then years later, a couple of the friends that I went with, I was like, what'd you guys think about the Blair Witch? Like, honestly, now that we're adults and, we don't have to put up this fake bravado or anything like that, what did you think of the Blair Witch Project? And one of my friends said, honestly, at the end, I thought I was going to piss my pants. And I was like, okay.
All right, another round. That's awesome. That's cool that you guys could talk about that, so many years later. I don't remember who I went with. I know I went with, it must have been either my sister, and a friend, or just friends. I do remember it not being in that many theaters. for
Right.
a while, and then in reading about it, I found out that it had a super small release. And then as it started making money and gaining, they saw that you had an audience, they released more, widely. But one of the first places I think was the Angelica Theater, which is down in the Village in New York City, which I used to frequent with my sister and then just on my own. But yeah, so I saw it there, I'm guessing, because it was like one of the only places it was playing. And we used to go down to the city so much around that time. Okay, so spoilers ahead. Just if you are interested in watching this movie and you never have, or you haven't seen it in the 20 something, 22 years since it came out, pause right here and come back to us. And now you're back. We will continue with spoilers ahead. So the movie was purported to be found footage of three student filmmakers who went missing in the woods just outside of Burkitsville, Maryland, in 1994. They had a very realistic missing poster made up with the three faces. And at the beginning of the movie, which is sort of like a documentary, it just says, three student filmmakers, went missing in 1994. A year later, their belongings and their video footage was found. And then what ensues is like what they had recorded. Basically, it's the story of these, this girl, Heather, and these two guys, Josh and Mike, who set out to make a documentary about the Blair Witch legend in Maryland. I keep thinking Pennsylvania, but it's Maryland. And they, I think they're all strangers to each other. They just meet like for the first time, I think, like for this project or something. That's the impression that I get. They don't really know each other that well. And they're interviewing people around the town. They shoot a scene in a cemetery and they're talking about, how many children went missing. And then they head out into the woods. They want to go see the cemetery where, there's some sort of like, I'm sorry. First, they want to see some place called Coffin's Rock or Coffin Stone, where the bodies of like 5 men were found, and then by like a rescue party, and then when everybody came back to rescue them, they were gone, never found. And then another spot where she calls it the cemetery, right? It's like she's like, oh, when we get to the cemetery, and then I'm looking for a cemetery, and I realize that it's just this like area with these cairns, which are like these piles of stones and rocks. There are seven children had gone missing. I'm going to stop right here because I have to ask you something, and I may sound really dumb, but whatever. Okay. I'm dumb if it is. They start out, they want to make this documentary about the Blair Witch, which is literally a witch that there's a legend about that, this one woman has seen, that this witch doesn't walk on the ground, that it's kind of like misty. They talk to like a fisherman who says like, yeah, like I saw her. She's like kind of like came out of the mist or whatever. But then they ask people about that, but these people are talking about some guy who killed 7 kids up in the mountain, or like up, like up this sort of small mountain or whatever, the woods area, right? So are they talking about 2 different things? Where does the Blair Witch and this guy who killed the kids connect? Because it's not the witch who kills them, it's this guy. They say that. So what does the witch have anything to do with it? Like I'm like, where's the witch?
I think the fact that maybe she possessed the man that did it. I think that's more or less what it is, that she kind of has the ability to inhabit anyone, and if you get too close, then you become hers essentially. So I think that's kind of the gist, because
But did,
I thought the same thing too.
thank you for saying that. I know you didn't. You're way too smart for that.
No, I did. I really did.
I was just thinking to myself, because I was like, wait a minute. Okay, so there's this guy, and they mention his name. I forget his name, but they mention his name, and that he comes down from his house, which is like up in these woods, and is like, they say like that, he says, I'm done. And they're like, what are you talking about? And he leads them back up to the house, and there's the bodies of 7 children that he's murdered, the same 7 kids that have gone missing. And so I'm like, okay, wait, what happened to the witch? Like, what's the documentary about? Like, is it about the serial killer? Like, or is it about a witch? Like, are they one and the same? Like, is this a man who dresses up as a witch? Like, I just got really confused, because and like I said, maybe I missed it in the movie, but I feel like I didn't hear them make that connection. It seemed like 2 separate things. And maybe if any of our friends who are listening also could, I mean, I believe you, Jeff, that that's probably the case, that the witch, because in witch lore, like supposedly they like to kill children and babies, right? Because they like helps keep them young or whatever.
No.
So that makes sense. Like if she's inhabiting or like forcing the hand of people and inspiring evil. But I'm wondering, like, maybe did we both miss it? Like, was there something said at some point that where, I don't know. Okay, so all right, we'll leave that there. We'll shelve it. Any of our friends who listen to this, who listen to the podcast or watch it on YouTube, because we're on YouTube, people, want to send us a text message or write into the show, movies to be murdered by at Gmail, and you can put the subject Jess is dumb. Like, that's fine.
No.
I'm being silly.
We're not allowing any Jessie slander.
No, I'm being silly. Thank you. But so they hear all these stories, then they head up into the woods, right? And the director is the girl, her name is Heather, and she's got a taste for the dramatic and the theatrical for sure. You could tell, the actress, if she's playing as herself or if she's playing a character, it's this very theatrical, dramatic, I've got everything under control. Everything is cool. I know where we're going. And she does get them to where they need to go. The problem is on the way back, she essentially she has taken so many off trails, so that coming back, she thinks she knows where she's going, and she's totally not going anywhere at all. And at that point, they all start to get mad at each other, and they all start to get annoyed. All of their flaws, each of their flaws starts, bugging out the others. She kind of doesn't stop filming this whole time. I mean, good for us, bad for their relationships, because they're all angry at her for continuing to film and document every single thing that's going on while they're lost, while they're starving, while they're crying, while they're upset, while they're hysterical, while they're freaking out and angry, and not, she just doesn't stop recording. So essentially they're lost. At one point, she's looking for the map. There's no map. The map is gone. Mike then later, in a fit of the giggles, which is like just him sort of losing it, admits that he tossed the map away, and it's gone. They don't have, and they basically, Josh and Heather basically run at him and attack him physically, because they're just so besides themselves that they don't have a map anymore. That was key to their getting out, et cetera, getting out of the woods. They're starting to feel really desperate now. Every night that they've camped out, I think they camp out like a total of 4 nights, maybe something like that. Yeah. And every night it gets increasingly worse in terms of the sounds that they hear outside their tent, odd occurrences. They wake up to find, wooden dolls, like very crude dolls hanging from trees, moss covered human-like forms. It's just really odd. They hear like children's noises and screams in the nighttime. They're all very, very scared. They want to go back to the car, which is they had left like just outside the woods, then they wake up one morning and Josh is gone. Somebody the day before had taken all their stuff. And then they wake up, like I said, and Josh is just gone. He's missing. They're terrified. They're calling for him. They can't find him. Now they're really bugging out. Mike starts like rocking back and forth and talking to himself and laughing, in the, sort of like typical, I've lost my mind, I've lost my marbles type of stance. And Heather starts just crying and losing it. And that night, they are positive that they hear Josh screaming for them and screaming in terror, but they can't find him. They can't even see him. They can't even see anything because, they have like the camera light and that's it. And he sounds kind of far away. Definitely sounded like him to me, though. What did you think? Like the first night that they heard the screams?
Yeah. I was there. I'm there with you. It sounded like him. And obviously at that point, if you're Mike and Heather, you're holding out hope that, that this is him. I mean, regardless of what condition or state he's in, you're just hoping that it's him again. So yeah, for sure.
Also, let me interject. I was talking with my friend Luann earlier. She's a big fan of the show. She wanted me to say hello to Jeff. She says the calmest voice in horror. She said, tell him I said hi. He's the calmest voice in horror. So hello from my friend Luann. Nice.
Thank you, Luann. Hello to you.
Yeah, she is absolutely lovely. She does not watch horror movies at all because I think she's, like many people, put off by them. They're scary. Scary is not always a good feeling, Yet she's a big fan of our show. So there you have it, which, hats off to friends who this might not be their genre or their thing, but they support us. So thank you. We will interrupt for a thank you.
Yes.
And then we'll get back into it. So they hear this, they're screaming for Josh. They can't see him. They can't get a sense of where the screams are coming from. The next day, they just walk more and more. And no, let me backtrack. They wake up the next morning. Heather sees a bundle of sticks shaped like people wrapped up in what is obviously Josh's flannel. 1994, people. We're talking flannel shirts, baby. We're talking Nirvana and Seinfeld and all those things from the 90s that we all love. Okay. Rewind back to normal, Jessie. We see strips of his flannel shirt that are holding the bundle together. She unwraps it. She finds a bigger piece of his shirt. And inside, it's all bloody. And she says, so this is all bloody. You could see it anyway. And then inside, Jeff, do you want to do the honors of what is inside? No, you don't. Okay. There's teeth with blood all over them, like pulled out from like the root, like so that it's not just like a little tooth, like, oh, the tooth fairy. No, it's like the whole thing comes right out. Adult teeth, a finger, part of a finger, and a large part of a tongue.
Yeah.
So that's wrapped in Josh's shirt. And that's why we heard those screams. She freaks out, understandably. She wraps it all back, like throws it, and then she runs to the little creek and washes her hands because they're covered in blood. And she's like, this I thought was very realistic. Mm-hmm. She rinses off her hands and she's showing the camera because she's recording everything. So we don't see her face, but she's showing the camera how clean her hands are. And she's like, look, like, see, like, kind of like in her head, like, no, this is not real. Like the blood's off, my hands are clean. This never happened, and then Mike's calling for her and asking her what the heck she's doing. And she's like, no, I'm just washing my hands. And she never tells him like what was delivered to their tent doorstep. Right. And I don't blame her. My husband was like, wait, did she tell him? And I was like, no, she does not want to tell him. She does not want to upset him
Right.
That's not going
Anymore.
to do. Yeah, because he's gone beyond, and what good is that really going to do for someone whose mind is unraveling? And therein lies the horror of this movie, I think. And I think we talked a little bit about this before, Jeff, about how like the horror of this movie is like feeling like the movie makes you feel like you're there.
Yes.
You know, like
It's one of those movies that, you know, you hear people talk about a movie transporting you to a specific location or a specific time. If it's a period piece,
yeah.
this is one of those movies that you feel no matter where you are. You can be in a room full of people. You can be outside on a bright sunny day. If you're watching this movie, you feel this eerie, you know, feeling where you don't know what's next. You know, you're kind of anticipating along with them, and that's what's so brilliant about this, is because they're taking us on the ride with them as they go. And having Heather kind of document everything, it makes it feel like that. It makes it feel like you're a part of the journey. And there are times where you just want to say, hey, how about you turn this way or do this? You feel that need to kind of help them, even though you know you can't. So this is one of those movies that is really good at transporting you into the scenery.
Yep. 100%. I was sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, why do I feel so scared right now? My hands are like, my feet were all like tense and cold, and my hands were clammy, and I'm not, feeling great. And I'm starting to feel like kind of like scared, and I'm thinking to myself, it's because I feel like I'm right there with them because of the way the footage is shot. It's all shaky and handheld, and it's just, and I just like and then particular to this time period, like I was a teenager in the mid 90s, and like I remember when, like, because they're all, like, all three of them smoke, I think, except for Mike. I don't know, Mike. No, Mike smokes too. They all smoke cigarettes, and like I remember being a smoker as a teenager, and like in the mid 90s, like, and how like having a cigarette was like like the focal point of what you were doing at that moment,
Right.
and so like they were smoking cigs, and it became a whole thing about like are there any cigarettes left, like, and it just felt very familiar too. Like, it's not like I'm from Maryland or or anything, but I just felt like I could see myself in that situation with other teenagers doing something stupid, and just being there, or knowing people who were there or something, you know what I mean? Like, it just felt, and I was like, as I'm watching, I'm like, this feels real. This feels very real. I had found this article, which was really just like a kind of like a pull from Stephen King's book, Dance Macabre. And I had shared it with you, Jeff. I know we both read it, about how he really admired this movie. He felt it was truly scary. It truly scared him. And I'm sorry, I got some interference on my okay. Yeah, so it really scared him, and he said because it felt so damn real. Like, it felt so damn real, and I'm like, yep, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, he said it all. It felt really real. And so, Heather and Mike continue on their journey. They're really out of sorts. They just keep wandering around the woods. At this point, they have no idea where they're going. They're just picking a random direction because she still has the compass, and they're going east. And they settle in for the night again. Heather records a video message, a teary-eyed video message, and that's the graphic that we see on the poster for the film, with the person's face that's like cut off to like here, and has like a bright light on them, and she's crying, and she's saying, like, she apologizing to the moms of the three of them, because she says she sort of kind of like finally cops to like the fact that she wasn't as in charge as she kind of made herself out to be, that she was really naive in doing this, and that she feels that, I mean, I think she was wrong. And she said, like, this is all my fault. I feel like this is all my fault, that all of this is happening because of, you know, how naive I was. I don't think it was really entirely her fault. Like, if we were just going to look at it like it really did happen, I don't think it was her fault. What do you think, Jeff?
I don't think it was her fault. I mean, you know, was this I guess a passion project for her to kind of make this film and do this? Absolutely. But it wasn't her fault, because there was genuine mutual interest, from Mike and from Josh. And, you know, I don't think it is fair for her to take all of the blame, or for us as an audience to give her all of the blame, because it's not like she forced them to tag along. But I mean, it's just one of those things where you can look at Mike doing something with the map. You know, I mean, that doesn't help matter. So,
Right.
so no, I don't think it's fair for her to take all the blame and receive all the criticism.
Yeah, I just I when Mike at one point was, you know, is yelling at her and like blaming her, and she's defending herself, and he is saying like, you know, I signed up for a project that was supposed to be like well plotted out, you know what I mean, in these woods. You know, that's what I signed up for, and this is not that, you know. And so I could kind of see like from their point of view, from like Josh and Mike's point of view, like she's the director, she's, you know, sort of like the main person. They're working for her, you know, essentially. But she's the one who was supposed to know where to go, and this is not working. This is, even though she kept saying like, yeah, I know what we're doing, I know what we're doing, I know where we're going, I know where we are. They still got lost, you know what I mean? And one of them is now missing. But that being said, no one plans for something like that to happen. And she didn't, it's like, we don't really see any evidence of really poor planning. It's more just like she wasn't as familiar with the woods as she thought she was.
Right.
And the fact that they are being followed by a person or persons, like basically throughout the whole film, is just evidence to things that would, you know, they all get unnerved. They all start unraveling, which doesn't make, you know, sort of trying to navigate themselves out of the woods any easier. So I'm not trying to make a case for Heather, but I just felt like, I remember thinking like when that scene popped up and she just seemed so sad and so contrite. And I was like, it's not like, girl, it's not like the whole thing isn't your fault. You were too like demanding. Yes. But like, you didn't make this happen. You know, there's something out there that's like, there's somebody out there that's chasing the three of you down, you know? It was funny towards the beginning of all the mess when they were like, it's just probably people from town messing with us. And she was like, why would anyone want to do that? He was like, I don't know. Did you ever see Deliverance? Like, I was like, oh my God, that's the scariest movie about going into the woods. Like,
Yeah.
So it was a cool reference. Anywho, they find a house. This is at nighttime. They both have the cameras on. At first I was like, come on. Like that almost took me out of the movie. Like Mike and Heather at this point would both be recording. And I was like, oh, duh, they're using it for light because the cameras have lights.
Right.
So they're both using it as lights. They find a house. They're calling for Josh. They hear somebody or something. They're going up and down the stairs. Mike is more sort of like in a like feverishly, like just Josh, you know, like just kind of, it just has become like a fixation. He can't focus on anything else. He's just going, so she's trying to talk to him and he's like not really paying her any mind. And they're just going up and down these stairs. They're seeing weird symbols everywhere. You see writing. But the cool thing about this was that the filmmakers, the production designer, the set designer, they didn't go like too nuts and gnarly that it makes it look fake. You know, like the children's handprints that we see like kind of like all over the wall almost looked a little much, but it was just on the line, I think, in my opinion. What did you think?
I agree. I think everything was it was as true to what could happen if this were to happen for real. It was as true to that as as I think it could be, honestly.
So, a quick interjection. There, part of this story about this child killer is that he would take the children in pairs, make one face away from him, face the wall towards the corner, while he murdered the other one, and then he would grab the one that was facing the corner in the wall and murder them also. And one of the people that talks on at the beginning of the footage from the town says like, oh, like he said he couldn't stand to feel the kids looking at him, so that's why he would make them face the corner. And basically the last scene is that we see as an audience. You remember, this is all found footage. This isn't like a movie. It's, supposed to be found footage. It's not a movie. And we see Mike facing the corner in this room, and then Heather screaming, and all of a sudden her camera gets knocked down also, and then that's it. That's all that we see. As an audience, we are left hanging because there's no explanation. There's no nothing after that. Just the credits come on. The movie circles back to the idea that these three people are missing, and just that their footage was found and their belongings a year after they went missing. What did you think, Jeff, at the end of the movie? What did you think, if you can remember, what did you think back in 1999, and what did you think in 2021?
I remember in 99 thinking, what did I just watch? Like I remember just thinking like, did I just see three people get murdered essentially on a movie screen? And then once it came out on VHS, yes, VHS.
I don't know if you can see it.
There you go.
It's my tattoo, people. It's hard to. Okay, it's there.
It was terrifying because you're like, okay, I mean, you can assume what happens, but there's this part of you that doesn't want to assume that. You're almost like, maybe, just maybe, but you don't go very far with that. This time around watching it, I think I was more terrified than I was when I was younger. And the reason being is as an adult, a true adult, it's terrifying to hear this story about the kids. That's, number one, especially as a parent, that part was just, terrifying for me. But then to see, like, I don't think I truly understood how grave the situation was. Like, just looking in as a viewer, I don't think you can really feel. I couldn't feel those emotions when I watched it way back when. I was just focused on the scared part. Like, this is a creepy movie. This is whatever this is creepy. And now as an adult, it's like you feel every single emotion of that moment. And then you start to pose a question to yourself, what would I do if if one, would I have even pursued learning about this? But two, let's say I did, or let's say that I wanted to support a friend and they wanted to, what would I do in those moments? And would I be able to, do anything at all? And, I think the fear of the unknown, the fear that there are forces out there that are wicked, um, it's terrifying. I mean, it really is, and I mean, it's almost hard to put into words how terrifying it is to see this kind of play out in real time, like at in those moments in front of your eyes, especially with the, I don't want to call it a gimmick, but especially with the premise that, hey, this is a found footage film. I just, it was terrifying. That's, I just went a long way around the fact of saying it was terrifying on both times, but it's more terrifying today to me for some reason than it was back in '99. What about you?
I had the same exact reaction that you said you had back then, after the first time of watching it, where I was like, "What did I just see? What just happened? Did I just see him facing the corner like some guy I think mentioned at the beginning? Oh my God, so that means that they're getting murdered, like right there on film. Like did I just see that? Like I remember I kept being like, what? Like, no, 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 no. And even thinking like, even if he wasn't getting murdered, that's some scary whatever that is. He's just standing in the corner, like kind of
Um,
slumped over, like just facing the corner. Like, what is that? What's that about? And where the hell is Josh? Um, but I also 100% agree with you about not like being scared and definitely feeling like rankled and spooked out when I left that theater. Like I was definitely glad to get out of the dark theater and step out into wherever. Um, but I was thinking my feeling watching it now in 2021 is that I, I it still worked. It still worked. I, we talked and we said that we would do this July month of horror blockbuster movies. And this movie was made on between 60,000 and 200,000 after like post-production money. It was made for between that amounts. It kept everywhere I read, it kept going back and forth between those two amounts. Like the actual movie was made for like under 60K, but then after all the editing and post-production, it wound up being like 200K. But then it made like an insane amount of money for an independent film. It grossed worldwide $248.6 million on a budget that was, let's just say it was $200,000. It was the distributing rights were sold to Artisan Entertainment after they did well at Sundance. And they distributed it to like limited and it still made a lot of money. I mean, it's like number 37 and the highest movie, like in terms of like what it was made for versus what it made movies, like how much it made. It's like number 37 in terms of the top grossing movies of all time. And in horror and indie movies, it just blew everything out, right? So I think it's just because the concept of like being left hanging. They always say what's scarier is what you don't see, because we fill in the blanks with plenty of horrific imagery and wondering, right? So I think that as grown-ups in 2021, both of us are parents. Even if we weren't parents, I think just coming at this movie as grown-ups, we understand what feeling vulnerable is like a whole hell of a lot more than we did when we were in our teenage years, which I think we both were when we saw this movie.
mhm.
You can't, like you said, you can't quite grasp all of the different types of fear, and the gravity of that situation was really, they understood it. Because they were like in it, and they were really good, and the actors were really good at displaying this. They were like, oh my god, like no one said it like out loud, but they were basically like, we're going to die. One of them says it at one point, like, we're going to die, you know, and the other one says, we're not going to, like, don't worry. You guys are worrying. This is America. No, you can't even hope to get lost anymore in any place in America. Everything's like, so, you know, like there's routes, there's trails, there's commerce everywhere. Like, you know, there's nowhere to get lost anymore. Don't worry, guys, we got this, you know, but it's not true. Like, they found one place where they stumbled and there was someone coming after them. And like she said, she was too naive, you know? So we can see that as grownups now and appreciate without the block of feeling young and invincible. Cause I mean, it's literally a thing. When you're young, you feel like you're never going to die. That's like a biological thing, you know? And when you're grown up, you definitely know you can die.
Right.
That's the horror of getting old, right? Is that you realize, like, yeah, we're mortal. Whoops. Like, yeah. Well, yeah. So, and then as parents too, you know, I didn't quite feel this way yet because my son isn't like a teenager yet. And he's still young, but like, I did sort of look at them like kids too. You know, I didn't, when I saw this movie, I think I thought of them as like kind of older than me, which they probably were supposed to be. And now I'm like, those kids, like those were just kids, you know, they might've been like 21 or 22 or however, they're just kids. Like, that's the hell were they doing, you know? So also one other thing that grabbed me, and I'll just like with reference to the date, is how at one scene Josh is like, my girlfriend is going to notice that I'm missing because I didn't call her, because I haven't called her. And when I haven't called her for 2 days, she's going to be worried. And when I don't show up and the other one's like, I don't show up at work. And they were like, when you don't show up at work, people are going to start taking notice that we're missing and they're going to come look for us. Right. And so, and it's like, you know, it's that little like twinge that you get now as watching it. Like, this would never happen now because of cell phones. I mean, they might not have service, but they would have cell phones. They would be calling, you know, like somebody would have service at some point, you know, and it's just, there's lots of like little inklings of this could never happen now, you know, for the movie, but it didn't feel dated to me somehow, even though it was nostalgic to see like their clothes and the way they were acting just because they were young, you know, young in the 90s, but like it didn't feel dated and unwatchable at all. I think it's actually aged pretty good. I mean, I know it's been 20 something years since I saw it, but I remembered it very well. And I was like, I was thinking to myself, it'll probably be a little boring because I know the ending already. And nope, not boring at all. Nope. Scary, still scary. So if you haven't watched the Blair Witch Project, the original, the OG, none of the sequels and whatnot, watch it. Because if you haven't seen it since the 90s, watch it. It holds up. It's a good movie. It's a good horror movie. I don't know. I can't think of any movies that are like it. You know, obviously a lot of movies came out since then because of the success of this found footage thing, but they were all different. None of them could do a campaign like the Blair Witch Project did with the whole, like, is this for real or is this for fake? Are these people really missing or are they just actors? You know, Cloverfield, Paranormal Activity, all of these were like found footage type films that were all very successful and like bankrolled by, you know, the major Hollywood players and studios, but none of them quite had the real like stomach gut punch that the Blair Witch Project had. Do you feel like giving this movie a rating? Do you have anything else you want to say? I don't want to cut you off.
No, you're not. I mean, honestly, I've said it already, but it was terrifying watching it again. I struggle with what to grade it because there's a part of me that wants to just give it a 5. But, you know, five headstones because of what it created a lane for. Um, because it was so unique and so terrifying. Then there's a part of me that's like, at a 4.5, and I don't really know why I'm taking off the half. Um, I guess I'm gonna do it. I'll say 5, um, because for what it was so unique. If you take the entirety of the marketing and the way this was made, and the idea that they kept these actors out of the spotlight because they wanted to keep that image of it being real. Um, that took some dedication, and I'm sure that I'm hoping that those actors were paid handsomely to do that, because honestly, I'm pretty sure that some of these folks could have gotten other jobs during that point. Um, and Josh, by the way, I love him in so many things that he does. So, the fact that, I the fact that he's in this, and this was kind of his first foray, and then he's been in a lot of other really good horror movies since then. Yeah, that was great. But yeah, I'm gonna stick with a 5 on this. I feel like it's worthy. It's a classic, honestly, for what it did for the horror genre. And I know the next question.
The ink test.
There's no way I'd get any ink of this film anywhere remotely close to the surface on my body. There's no way, because there's still a part of me that's like, you know what? I just don't want to play with that. So I don't want any reminders of it. So no ink for me. It's a classic, but you won't see me tat it with this anywhere close to me. So with that being said, rating and the ink test for you.
Well, I just wanted to say one thing. Like, I forget which character it was in the film. One of the people that they interviewed was like, was like, I don't believe in it enough to, like, I forget to make a big deal out of it, but I believe in it enough that I'm not going anywhere near those woods. I think it's the mom with the baby. She says that, like, yeah, and the baby keeps trying to quiet the mom.
Like,
That was
no.
Well, the mom's telling a scary story and she keeps putting her hand over her mouth. I was like, well, that baby knows not to speak evil, like,
Which I thought was great, because it's like, you got the baby like, no, and getting upset because the mom's just talking about it.
Yep.
That's great.
I thought that was actually really good for their documentary that they were supposedly making. And when that guy was like, you damn fool kids never learn. And she was like, wait, why are you saying the damn fool kids never learn? And he was like, because there's something out there and everybody knows it. And, like, you're going out there to, like, look for it. And his friend's like, there's nothing out there. You're drunk. I love that interaction between, there's some humor. There's some humor in this movie too, which is, it's just great. In terms of rating, I'm also going to give it a 5. I think that the Blair Witch Project became a modern horror classic, and earns its place on the shelf. No one else could fill that. I know it takes, the found footage concept. I know, like, Cannibal Holocaust. Saying it the wrong way. Cannibal Holocaust did that in, like, 1980 or something, and, like, they've every article you read makes mention of that movie and how that was, like, the prototype of, the Blair Witch Project and stuff. So I guess we should mention it also. We are aware that this was not the first movie that used that concept of a film crew gone missing, doing something dangerous and recording, but that movie is, like, too much. I can't watch that movie. There's all the dead animals that they actually did kill. And
Yeah,
no
that's
thanks. No thanks. So I would give it a 5 because, like I said, it's got its own space on the shelf of horror classics. Like, you can't not have the Blair Witch Project. It's an essential movie. If you're a horror fan, you know this movie, and you may have even traipsed into the world of their sequels, none of which were directed by the directors. They didn't have anything to do with it.
I did that.
We'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, I did that.
I do want to watch the Curse of the Blair Witch, the fake documentary that they made to go along with the movie. I didn't see that. I want to see that because apparently it talks more about like the serial killer, I guess, that like gets that gets the kids and stuff. So anywho, that's I'm sidetracking. Would I get any ink? I would consider getting those little like wooden doll, like, like rough doll things that they find hanging, because they're pretty cool looking. And it's immediately like, if you know movies, you see one of those and you immediately think that's the Blair Witch Project, but I wouldn't in real life, because like, I don't, like we talked about last time, like I don't want anything negative or spooky ass, like, on my body. I gotta look at that. That symbol is very cool, I think, and it holds up. Like I said, it's so iconic, but no, even though it's fiction and like those were created by like a set designer and stuff, like, what they represent in the movie is just evil, so no thanks. So no, I in real life would not get anything tattooed from the Blair Witch Project, but I will tell people going forward that, yeah, if you haven't seen it since it came out, you should give it a rewatch. It's definitely holds up. So
Absolutely. And I mean, it's there. I knew you were going there with though, and that's exactly why I wouldn't get anything, because that's the first thing that I think of when I'm thinking of this movie is those darn dolls that scare the crap out of me. And I mean, no, not me, not me. I can't do it. No, that's all I have to say.
yeah, no. It's like, it's just can't mess around with the dark stuff. For me personally, hey, if you're out there and you're listening or you're watching, no judgments. It's
No,
cool. You know what I mean? Like a lot of imagery and stuff out there is awesome, and it's totally rock and roll. Just personally, I just, for my own, mental health sake, I can't rock anything dark. Anything that will, if I'm going through, like a bad state, when I have no filter and everything's affecting me, like, it's whenever, we will talk about that another time, but it's a blessing and a curse, more of a curse. I don't want to have anything around me that usually in general that like could trigger any more dark images in my own head that won't come out. So, okay, guys, thank you for hanging out with us for the Blair Witch Project. We are on our summer of blockbusters. Scroll through the past couple of episodes. We've got some really cool ones. Last one we did was Jaws, so that would talk about summer blockbusters. And we have more in store for you for next week. Want to say thank you to my brother in pod, Jeffrey Watson, Esquire the Third, for just being awesome and setting all of this up for us and manning the controls and making sure we sound good every week, so thank you.
No, I mean, thank you. Thank you. I listen, I really enjoy our conversations about movies, and it's just great. So, I mean, thank you for being a part of this. It's so much fun. So thank you.
My heart.
No tears today.
No tears. So we'll see you guys next week. Get at us on Instagram, Movies to Be Murdered By. movies-to-be-murdered-by@gmail.com. If you know us personally, send us a text and tell us what you think of the episode. If you don't know us personally, that's what email is for. Twitter, Instagram. We love you guys. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Game over.